I was setting a crystal flute beside a billionaire's plate when he said it in Arabic, soft enough to sound casual, sharp enough to cut. Something like dress the help how you want crystal in their hands still looks like fields on their feet. I answered in the same language, clear and steady. The crystal does not lower the one who holds it. It only reflects the dignity of the one who drinks from it. The laughter stopped like someone pulled a plug, and for a beat the chandeliers hummed louder than the people. His smile froze, the glass hovered, and I stood there with my tray like I'd done 1,000 times, except now every eye in that Beverly Hills ballroom finally saw me. Yeah, that happened. Here's the part most people never ask about, the part before the dress code and the service steps and the room that smells like money. I grew up in Atlanta, between the edge of Buckhead and the edge of a past due bill. My dad was a Navy man who believed in showing up, shoes polished, shoulders back. My mom was a linguistics professor at a small college who believed stories could carry a person across a canyon. We didn't have much, but we had books stacked like small cities around the sofa, French verbs on grocery receipts, Arabic poems read by candlelight when the power company needed time, Spanish radio drifting through the kitchen, while my mother translated the punchline and then the pain. By 10, I could switch tongues without thinking. By 17, I had a full ride to one of those programs that lands you in rooms with flags and microphones. I was the quiet storm, the girl who could read an Arabic brief faster than most people could read it in English. Then the scan lit up like a night sky stage, 4, aggressive, unforgiving. I dropped everything in 48 hours and never looked back. You know what I mean? When life strips your calendar, you stop arguing with it. I worked any job that kept the cabinet full of medicine, barista, office assistant, tutor, until the restaurant took me because I could carry 3 plates on one arm and remember the name on a reservation better than the person who made it. I learned to make myself invisible with precision. If every edge lined up, if the water poured to the same line on every glass, people looked past me. Most nights, that was the plan. The night of the gala, that plan didn't stand a chance. Al Najjar Energy Group rented the Rosemont Grand Ballroom and polished it until the marble looked like a second ceiling. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, tuxedos, and silk moved like a tide, and everything was curated to look generous and feel exclusive. Kareem Al Najjar held court with the confidence of a man who knows cameras love him. Table 9 was a circle of power. Producers, donors, a couple of names that make headlines behave. The microaggressions warmed up like a band, quiet at first, trained to sound like jokes. Look at her hair. Do you think she understands us? Probably just yes, sir, and right away. I did what I always do. I lined the napkins, adjusted a knife that had shifted a hair to the left, kept my voice soft and my posture straight. Then Kareem's Arabic line cut across the table and the room gave him permission with a laugh. I put the last flute down, lifted my head, and said what I said. I didn't need volume. I needed truth with clean consonants. And it landed. It would have been a tidy ending if the scene ended there, a little viral moment with subtitles. But rooms like that don't surrender just because you bring a sentence to a gunfight. 2 seats down, an economist named Victor Morrow leaned in, a smirk parked on his mouth, and switched to formal Arabic like a professor testing a student on live TV. He asked whether the boom in the Maghreb was sustainable or just a bubble painted by foreign cash and short-term infrastructure. It wasn't curiosity. It was a trap with silverware. I didn't flinch. I broke it down. Logistics choke points, port throughput on paper versus in practice, youth unemployment curves that bend street patience faster than investors believe, and a line from a World Bank note that had dropped 2 months earlier. I answered the way I used to in seminars, calm, sourced, surgical. Victor blinked, nodded once, and switched to English. Impressive. A diplomat cleared his throat and looked at me like I had rearranged his furniture. Kareem didn't speak, but his hand tightened around the stem of his glass. Power doesn't like to be misread, and in that moment, he knew he had. Here's the twist most people think I planned. I didn't. It was a worn envelope in my apron because I had cleaned out a drawer the week before and found it tucked inside an old notebook. Embossed gold, the logo of Al-Najjar Energy. A scholarship invitation to a summer mentorship program. 4 years old, signed by Kareem himself. I lifted it gently. I said I earned this when I was top of my class. I never replied because my mother collapsed 2 weeks later, and I chose hospitals over offices. Then I asked the question that had been sitting in my chest like a stone. If I had walked into your office looking like I do tonight, would you have opened the door? No one laughed. Not because the room had become kind, but because the room had been handed a mirror. At the far end, a man in a white dinner jacket tried to pull us back to the script. She speaks well, but parrots do too. A couple of safe chuckles, the kind people let out when they're not brave enough to breathe. Kareem tried to recenter the night. Let's not get carried away. This is still a waitress. Talented maybe, but she serves drinks, not policy. Look, I could have lit him up. I didn't. I folded the envelope and slid it back into my pocket. I placed a napkin with the same care as before. There is a volume to silence when you choose it, and it's louder than most speeches. That's when Layla Al-Najjar stood. No glass tap, no performance, just a chair that scraped the floor softly enough to make everyone lean in. She walked to me and said she wanted to apologize, not as a daughter performing cleanup, but as a person who had been in rooms like that her whole life and stayed quiet because it was easier. She unfolded a page from her late mother's notes. Professor Nayan Al-Najjar, a woman I had admired on paper, but never met, and read a line I will carry forever. Aaliyah Brooks, exceptional linguistic ability, poise under pressure, recommended for mentorship. The room exhaled. The people who had laughed looked at their plates like they might find forgiveness folded in the linens. I nodded, took the paper, and asked calmly, would anyone care for more sparkling water? It sounds small, but it was a declaration. I wasn't asking for permission to exist. I was running the table because I had earned the right to speak in every language in that room, including the one of restraint. By morning, the clip was everywhere, grainy phone video subtitles racing across the bottom, 100 captions trying to explain a thing you can only feel. Hashtags in 3 languages. Think pieces about class, race, power, the weight of a tone. Al-Najjar Energy released a statement about values and reviews. Sponsors backed away from a deal. A journalist dug up older interviews and asked harder questions. An education nonprofit launched a scholarship in my name for women of color in language and diplomacy within 48 hours. Strangers dropped flowers at the host stand. A kid left a drawing of a server with curly hair and a tray like a shield. My manager offered a week off. I shook my head. I wasn't trying to be a storm. I was trying to keep my rent paid and my center steady while the world argued about a night I just needed to survive. In the kitchen, the dishwashers started calling me Professor. The staff moved around me with a new kind of respect, not because I had become a symbol, but because I had stayed myself while the room tried to make me small. A week later, Layla came back with a small notebook that belonged to her mother, notes on students and strangers. Sentences that changed her mind. There was a page with my name. In the corner, a line that felt like a hand on my shoulder. Some people carry words like armor. She used them like light. I didn't cry. I just let my breath settle and felt something shift, not fame, not victory, just peace. Outside, a little girl pointed through the glass and told her parents, "That's the lady who speaks all the languages. Not the help, not the waitress. The lady. All the languages." Sometimes dignity doesn't knock, it just stands there, speaks, and waits for the room to catch up. So tell me, was I right to answer the way I did, or should I have kept my head down and let the night pass? When a joke is a weapon, where do you draw the line between grace and fire? If you've seen a room tilt because someone refused to shrink, I want to hear it. Drop your story in the comments. Push back if you disagree, share this with someone who needs a sentence to carry into their next hard room, and hit follow so you don't miss the next story. Because talking about it isn't just content, it's how we decide what we will and won't allow together.